US President Joe Biden has arrived in Ukraine's capital city of Kyiv in an early morning surprise visit to underscore American support for President Volodymyr Zelensky and his war efforts against Russia. This is what reports are pointing out at the moment, shrouded in secrecy and coming days before the first anniversary of Russia's invasion. This trip marks the first time US President Joe Biden has traveled to Ukraine as the President of the United States. Do remember, armed with billions of dollars worth of weapons from Western countries and in desperate need for more, Ukraine has fought the Russians to a bloody standstill. Despite American sanctions and the devastating battlefield losses of people, equipment, infrastructure, Moscow continues its assault on Ukrainian defenses. And now US President Joe Biden has landed in Ukraine, in Kyiv in fact, in a surprise early morning visit. Well, multiple government agencies and officials in the United States and Ukraine have not immediately told us as to what the modus operandi or the plan of action during US President Joe Biden's trip is. But a senior White House official and a US government official with knowledge of the trip did confirm the visit on condition of anonymity, because no one so far in the core team of Biden is authorized to speak publicly about this. Let's go across to my colleague Vishnu Shom for the latest. Vishnu, US President Joe Biden has made a surprise early morning visit to Ukraine's Kyiv. What can you tell us at the moment?
Well, very little. It's obviously a secret visit. It is absolutely huge. Photographs are now emerging in the last 10 minutes of Biden in Kyiv, along with Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president. It comes at a time when I think this is perhaps the strongest reaffirmation of the support of the United States to the Ukrainian cause. Whether this would actually result in further assistance from the United States militarily or trigger some sort of initiation of conversation on a way out through dialogue, we don't know as yet. But the fact of the matter is that the United States has committed to more weaponry for Ukraine. They've even gone to the extent of looking at whether they can finance pensions for Ukrainian citizens of certain groups. And now you've got Biden, in Kyiv. So this is a huge visit, perhaps the most significant visit by any Western leader at a time when Ukraine faces immense threats from constant targeting of their facilities, by which I mean primarily infrastructure. As far as the war itself is concerned, there's a bit of a stalemate situation which has now emerged in the eastern part of Ukraine. It's been a war which has gone on through the winter. Very soon it's going to be almost 1 year of the war. And at the moment, despite being able to regain some of the territory, a fair amount of the territory which they'd lost to the Russians, at the moment there's a bit of a stalemate which has emerged in the eastern part of the country. Now, what the Ukraine has been wanting is heavy weaponry. They've been wanting Leopard tanks from several European countries. That's been cleared, so they'll be getting these tanks from Germany and some of their NATO allies, Germany's NATO allies, Ukraine not a part of NATO. And they have also asked the United States for more HIMARS rocket system. The HIMARS is a state-of-the-art. It's a guided rocket system which can actually target specific areas based on intelligence very, very reliably, and that's been seen to be a game changer. So the process of arming the Ukraine continues. That's one. Number two, the Ukraine has been wanting F-16 fighters widely used by several European air forces. That will require sanction, of course, from the United States, but perhaps there would be some safeguards on their use, whether they could be used outside Ukrainian airspace, in other words, to carry out strikes within Russia or not. That needs to be seen. It's still to be cleared, but that's something the Ukrainians have been wanting. But I think the symbolism of what we see over here is huge. At a time when there have been so many who have felt that, and have pointed out that the war is in a bit of a stalemate. There is immense loss of life now on both sides. Ukrainian infrastructure very, very badly hit. Electricity supplies, that's a huge cause of concern. You've got Joe Biden, who suddenly shows up and is visible now in downtown Kyiv. He's on a walkabout, at least in central Kyiv. He was a little while ago. So what the statements are on this, we can find out later on, and I'm sure there'd be a lot. But I would actually say that this is absolutely huge in terms of of support for the Ukraine, and one way or the other would certainly bolster their cause. Now, as I mentioned, there are two parts to this. It comes at a time when America has committed to continuing to assist the Ukraine militarily and financially, but it also comes at a time when, as I mentioned, the war in the East has come to a bit of a stalemate. So would Biden also try and encourage or have some sort of suggestions on a negotiated path out? Because so far, Ukraine has been absolutely clear. There is no negotiation with Russia until such time as several conditions are met. The Russians are absolutely clear as well that their objectives, do remain in Ukraine. So it's been a stalemate in that sense. There have also been fears of a renewed effort by the Russians to mount a spring offensive through the mounting or through forces, large numbers, tens of thousands of soldiers, again coming in or targeting Ukraine from the north. But whether that actually materializes, we don't know. We also know that the Russian economy is now almost completely geared towards fueling this particular war. But whether Russia can sustain these operations is anybody's guess right now, because the lives that they have been losing, by some estimates, more than 1 lakh lives, the weaponry that they've been losing, it's a question of whether they'd be able to sustain their efforts. But again, there is no statement remotely close from Vladimir Putin or the Kremlin suggesting that they were looking for an early way to get out of this conflict. So, what does America actually do? Because America is going to be playing a very, very important role in this. If America says that they're going to carry on and encourage Ukraine to fight, the Ukrainians will fight, because public support for Zelensky is absolutely immense. There is no such thing in Ukraine about a change of opinion or a lack of support for Zelensky and his war effort. So in that situation, if America were to say, all right, fine, we'll continue to arm you, then that means likely the war will continue, right? And how much longer, nobody knows. On the other hand, if there's a more pragmatic view on where this conflict is going, and whether if there is some sort of an initiation of a process towards dialogue, then perhaps that would lead us in a different direction. But one way or the other, Biden, the U.S. President Joe Biden, making a surprise visit to Kyiv, it was completely unannounced, as you would expect, and it's his first since the start of Russia's full-scale war on Ukraine.